Good morning, Angela and Judy.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning.
That's quite the list, and it kind of makes you wonder what the coming spring and summer have in store for Ottawa.
No kidding. But I think the western wildfires and the polar ice melts, they get more of the headlines. But the effects of climate change are very, very real here in the Ottawa area. We're seeing more climate events, and are we actually prepared? So, Judy, I know you've asked yourself that question for a long time. How did you get into this community resiliency emergency preparedness business?
That's right, Angela. I've been doing this for several years now. It all started for me back in September of 2018, right after the tornado in Dunrobin, the E3 tornado.
E3 means it's
very,
strong.
very bad, much more than the E1 or E2. So as we all learned the next day about the impact of that horrible tornado, and it wasn't very far away from me. I live in Carp. We learned 50 homes were destroyed or heavily damaged. The surrounding communities, we stepped up to help those residents with their recovery. I was president of my community association at the time in Carp, and I had no previous knowledge of disaster response. There was a core of about 10 of us coordinating a response, all the surrounding community associations. And we worked closely with our ward councillor, Eli El-Shatiri, at the time. So we recruited volunteers. We helped with debris removal. I know I was out there hauling away branches and to get access up the road to the Dunrobin Community Centre. We organized dinners for residents at a nearby school, and we talked to them about what they needed. We had a reception center, and we just talked to families as they came in, and what do you need? Kept track of it and tried our best to provide the resources and whatever they needed. And we found, incidentally, we should have known, but they really needed the opportunity to talk to each other. They felt no one understood what they were going through, so they enjoyed those dinners. We also assigned, as we got lists of families who needed help, we assigned a family contact person to maybe 10 families, and then we helped them connect with resources, and I set up some counseling services.
That's quite an operation, like quite comprehensive.
It was huge, and it went on for many, many months. We also fundraised. We eventually raised $750,000 through various means, very generous donors, and we distributed every penny of that to the residents, and that was quite the task, to divide up those funds equally.
That's like $750,000.
That was huge.
That's
that
big.
took us many, many months. And that overlapped, unfortunately, with the huge flood that happened the following spring. So as of 2019, we were responding to the flooding that happened all along the Ottawa River, specifically in our area in Constance Bay. And that flood is very different from a tornado in that the flood creeps in there over time. So that happened over maybe 2 to 3 weeks. But electricity was turned off. It wasn't safe to have electricity on. Roads were closed and flooded. Eventually, the army was called in by the federal government to help. And after all was, said and done, the dust settled, so to speak, we also fundraised and worked with families and helped them get grants through the province, the Derecho grants, and we worked with Mennonite Relief, and we helped them 2 homes to be totally rebuilt from the ground up. So,
on one hand, it's admirable that there's a community organization and also just sort of pop-up community resilience and mutual help. But it was just Dunrobin that got hit by the tornado. And other parts of Ottawa were still functional and fine. And also we weren't getting flooded out. So who is actually supposed to respond? You would think that there was remaining capacity in Ottawa to help people in West Carleton.
There was certainly considerable empathy, and that was where the fundraising came in. People were very generous and they wanted to help. But I guess just to trace when a disaster strikes and an emergency is declared, the city has emergency first responders. So the fire services, police, paramedics, they all work under the city's Department of Public Safety. And they go in there first. And we really have to stand back and let them do their important work. So if hydro lines are down across the road and there's glass everywhere and roads closed, if there's personal injuries, we really have to step back and let them respond. That's only reasonable. We're not first responders. So we let that essential work get done. In the background, however, we are communicating and we're on the phone and we're trying to reach out. I mean, I personally called the president of Dunrobin because I knew him and asked what he needed. Now, in my mind, not knowing what was needed, I thought I'd be making trays of sandwiches to take them in to feed him and the other volunteers. And then I learned that no, it's the public health prevents that. So we had to switch to using commercial kitchens to bring in meals for the volunteers. But there's a number of sort of government agencies and hydro and, roads crews that help. But I think one point that I think a lot of people don't understand is that the city's focus is on restoring infrastructure. Their focus is on schools and hospitals and hydro and roads. Their focus is not on helping you with your home and the tree across your driveway and the flooding in your basement.
Right.
So the city is not going to come to rescue you. And we realize that we are there to help each other. So the surrounding community associations, we had some expertise and skills to bring to the table, and we're willing to learn, and we all learned a lot. Our ward councillor was very important, was Eli at the time, and he helped us with liaison. And I guess the other thing is, if the city decides this disaster is massive, like the tornado and the flood of 2019 was, they will declare an emergency, and that allows the province to step in if they can't, manage. The province will step in, and if the province feels they don't have the resources, the province will call on the federal government and ask for the federal government. And at that point, the federal government, in 2019, they did call in the Army, for instance. So that's who actually responds.
Wow. So it seems that if you're sitting in Dunrobin, then City Hall in Ottawa is already quite far away. Is Toronto going to really come and help you? It seems like some of these other places are not really up to the task of helping people locally.
That's right. They're not even close. When a big event strikes, as we've had in West Carleton, we feel we've had more than our fair share.
Right.
We're a rural community. So one of the challenges we face as a rural community, as opposed to other wards in the city that are more urban, we face a massive distance problem. Mm-hmm. So, for instance, it takes me 45 minutes to drive from one edge of West Carleton to the other edge. West Carleton has 630 square kilometers. It is a massive area. It's the size of many small cities in Canada. And Ottawa itself, if we want to take a higher level, it's the biggest city in Canada. So you could put in Vancouver, Edmonton, Calgary, Toronto, and Montreal all within our boundaries. So, distance is a major issue for us in responding, for sure.
Mm-hmm. So what were some of the emergency needs? Like what have you yourself witnessed?
Yeah, I can talk best about the tornado because I was most personally involved there. So that was a devastating event for many, many families. If you imagine 50 families either losing their entire house or having their house damaged and they had to leave because it wasn't safe. Not only was their home destroyed, but everything was gone. Their records were gone. Their kids' birth certificates were gone. Their marriage licenses, their insurance papers, their precious photo albums, the kids' favorite toys. All their clothes were gone. So if you could imagine that sort of trauma and reaction and sudden change in your life. Also, just driving up and down the roads, all the trees were blown over. So the whole landscape changed. It was quite disturbing, I found. The local daycare center was damaged, so families had to, the tornado happened Friday night. By Monday morning, they needed daycare in order to go back to work. So a local church stepped up. families were housed miles away. Their insurance company put them many miles away, and the kids had to get to school. Thankfully, the school board bused the kids back to their community schools. And being a retired psychologist, I was concerned about, the emotional impact. Many, I believe, suffered PTSD.
Yeah.
And anytime a high wind came around, people would get very, very fearful, very scared.
Yeah.
And we needed to help them work through that. So
that's for sure. Yeah. Like I've been in post-earthquake situations where there's the aftershocks.
Yeah.
And people get very, very anxious.
Yeah.
So what were some of the key roles that your volunteers were able to fill? And how did that actually work?
Yeah, it evolved over time. As I say, I walked in there blind, not knowing what to do or what my role was. So we were very much grassroots. We learned as we went. We built on relationships. Some of us knew each other as community association presidents.
Right.
We pulled on the natural leadership of community members. And if you look around, there's lots of natural leaders in every community. So we welcomed other people who just really stepped forward. Some churches stepped forward, some service clubs, the Lions Club, and they would bring some skills with them, their experience in organizing and communicating. One of our local volunteers was a retired school principal. She was wonderful with people, particularly with children. She helped us a lot. But we do, as West Carleton Disaster Relief, we do all kinds of things. So we do fundraising. In July, for instance, we provide the July concerts in the park. Every Thursday night in July, we organize concerts. We have to do a lot of that kind of organizing. We also, one thing we've recently discovered is the Amateur Radio Club of Ottawa.
Oh, wow.
And they're now a full partner with us. And again, I'm learning more than I ever thought I would need to know about amateur radios and how they communicate with each other. But after the tornado again, all the cell phone towers were blown down, and the mayor couldn't talk to the fire chief, and the fire chief couldn't talk to police, and no one could talk to the residents. So we learned from experience not to count on cell phones or landlines or the internet because, the hydro was down. So we do a whole bunch of different things. Our volunteers can do everything from chainsawing, trees that are across people's driveways.
So what you're basically saying is that an emergency strikes one of our neighborhoods, especially in the rural area, which is more removed, and there is no functioning local emergency command structure, but the local community basically comes together and makes it up as you go.
That's right. And I think, if you've watched the evacuations from wildfires across Canada, you've seen, you see news clips about people stepping up and helping each other, trucks helping people, evacuate and making sure everybody gets out. And, I think, one thing it's reassured me is that people are generally kind and thoughtful and caring and empathetic, and they do step up. And if you've got some sort of a structure where they can fit in, they feel there's work they can do, then they're happy. And if nothing else, they'll donate money. So it's been very rewarding.
I think that's part of actually the climate action work. There's a lot of people that are wanting to know what can we do. So creating these tasks and opportunities that are not overwhelming that people can do. And I think that emergency preparedness is also part of that climate action work. So it's kind of reassuring that you're saying that people spontaneously show compassion for their neighbors, and that is part of the culture that we have here in Ottawa.
Yeah, for sure.
So what do you think is missing in terms of our positioning right now, knowing that there will be more extreme weather, more emergencies coming from a destabilizing climate?
Well, our West Carleton Disaster Relief, our board meets regularly, and we've talked at length about how we can go forward from a grassroots figuring it out as we go to a more permanent, ongoing, professional group that is ready to respond. What we really need is training. We need there's formal training available. We need to train volunteers who are willing to work as community emergency response team, or a CERT. These would be volunteers. You might have 3 or 4 or 5 in each village or in each community, but they need access to equipment. So we need community-based hubs where they have equipment like generators and pumps and lights and radios, that sort of thing. We also need to really keep in mind that there are going to be some residents in every neighborhood who are more vulnerable.
Clearly, yeah.
So that's really one of the issues that we want to discover, who they are, and they're really the residents most at risk in a climate emergency.
But the question that has been in my mind is like, how do you track these folks? I mean, like, there's no way that community organizations can have lists of vulnerable people. That doesn't work with privacy. The list would be out of date very quickly. So how does that work? I mean, if we have a really good social fabric, then people know each other. But beyond that, is there things we can do?
Yeah, I think it's very challenging. As you say, we can't keep lists. That would be against all privacy rules. We even struggle as to whether we can keep addresses, because not everybody wants anyone to know that their home maybe was badly flooded. For myself, for instance, now I'm a very social person, and I know many of my neighbors, and I know, for instance, there's an older couple that live near me, and they have mobility challenges. She's disabled. He recently had a bad fall and needed a hip replacement. So if my neighborhood, for instance, I'm in Carp, we back onto the Carp Hills, which is 10,000 acres of forest and wetlands. So if Carp needed to be evacuated, I'd want to check that they were able to get out.
Right.
I would hope I'm not the only one that thinks about stuff like that. But I think we'd want to have a network. What I'm hoping to do, this is my fantasy, is to have zone captains and have someone like me in every neighborhood who just kind of notices stuff and talks, and maybe they're dog walkers and they see who's on their street who maybe is not getting out. One example we had during the flood, last flood, 2023 flood, there have been so many, there was one elderly lady who we could tell from the street her home was flooded, and we needed to offer her some help. We would go to the door and she wouldn't answer the door. She was very nervous about answering the door. One can't blame her. We didn't have her phone number, but we finally figured out that she would answer the door if her next door neighbor came to the door. She'd recognize him. She opened the door. He explained to her that these people are here to help you, and do you need, sandbags, or do you need to get out, or whatever? Do you have any hydro on? We just were able to check in with her. But that's one example of one vulnerable person and how we kind of figured that out.
It's definitely not a no-brainer, especially in an emergency context where all the regular 9 to 5 sort of mosaic of social services presumably are not functioning. So who, in your opinion, needs to really step up more to help address these issues, like federal, provincial, municipal?
They all need to. All levels of government need to step up more. As you said, and this is your life's work is community resilience and response to climate change, mitigating the impacts of climate change. And I think we're all still in denial, largely. The big problem is cost. I've read an article that said dealing with climate change will be the most expensive issue we've ever faced, and we're not ready to devote those resources yet. It's going to require a massive investment of funds and training and a shift in priorities. We're not there. At a federal level, they called in the Army in 2019. But it's my understanding the Army has made it clear that that's really not how they see their role. Their troops are highly trained, and they are training them to respond to war, security issues, and they don't feel necessarily filling sandbags is how their troops should be used. So the federal government has moved away from relying on the Army as their, go-to, and they've set up what they're calling a humanitarian workforce, and they're working with partnerships with large organizations like Salvation Army, Red Cross, Mennonite Relief, that sort of thing. So that's the federal approach.
Well, I would like, just looking in a slightly longer term, if we're going to be spending 5% of GDP on defense/military, and climate impacts, extreme weather are part of the very predictable, real physical threats to the welfare of Canadians, I think they might have to rethink that the Army is there just to, I don't know, do high-tech warfare. I think they're also going to continue to be one of our sort of fronts that can be doing sandbag jobs.
Sure, frontline. I don't disagree with you. I guess I'm just sharing what I understand is the direction that's being taken.
Right.
I would be the first to support what you're suggesting.
So the province lately, I know that with this latest genius Bill 98, the province is going to take an eraser and erase references to climate in the Planning Act, so that official plans and building standards do not have to be officially resilient. So what's the province doing from what you know in terms of helping volunteers be more resilient?
Yeah, I'm not as familiar with the impact on planning. I do read the kind of articles that you're referring to. What I know is that the province is setting up what they're calling the Ontario Corps, CORPS, Corps of Volunteers, and they're asking people to sign up. So what you do is you sign up. You just go on the provincial website and sign up to be a member. You fill in a lot of information, what your skills are, your willingness to travel, etc. There's some online training. You can take level 1 and level 2, which I've done, which is basically a Friday night or Saturday afternoon. And so they're keeping a list of names of people who are on this Ontario Corps list of volunteers, and we could, I guess, theoretically be called on to respond to an emergency in Ontario. So that's all that I'm familiar with.
So you've done a lot of work over in this area and really built up capacity in your community. What's your current wish list? What do you think needs to happen to ensure that residents are more ready for the inevitable climate events on the horizon?
Yeah, residents being ready. This is how I spend my days. So we do, every May we do an emergency preparedness month presentation, and I don't have a date yet. But what I do is I do a little workshop in my area, and we talk about readiness. We've had focus on maybe wildfire readiness, or certainly we've done a lot of work on flood readiness. West Carleton Disaster Relief has pamphlets. I brought in some. You can get all of these on our website. Just look up West Carleton Disaster Relief. We have pamphlets for blackout ready. Are you blackout ready? Are you wildfire ready? Are you flood ready? We also give out when we're doing in-person events. We've got, the city has an excellent pamphlet called Are You Ready? That's excellent. We also push, because I'm in a rural area near Carp Hills, we are really pushing the advice and suggestions from a group called Fire Smart. So this is how to protect your home so that your home will still be standing if a wildfire burns through your community. And these have been research tested, and they're being used all across North America. So helping residents be ready. We gave a workshop just last fall on how to put together a go bag. And I made myself do this because you'd think I would have one, wouldn't you? But I didn't. I had an old one, but it was full of what we used to recommend was like camping supplies, like candles and canned, beans and blankets and all this stuff. And
what's the modern go bag?
Well, I finally realized, you know what? I'm not going camping. I'm not getting in my car and going camping. I'm going to a hotel.
Right.
And I'm taking my cats.
Okay.
So I'm taking, a change of clothes. I'm taking copies of documents on a little stick.
Right.
I'm taking essential information with me. I'm taking my cats. So I'm taking a change of clothes, I'm taking some documents, I'm taking, flashlights just in case the power's out. So I've repacked my bag, and I have a whole little presentation now what my bag looks like. It's heavy, but it's doable. And I'm not taking, so if you go on the older websites, even the city's one, I think they talk about taking enough water to last you for 4 days. Well, I can't lift that much water. Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and then every 3 months you're supposed to replace the water because the plastic gives off leachate and microplastics and yeah.
And I won't tell you how out of date those cans of beans were when I finally repacked my bag. It was pretty disgusting. Anyway, so I now have a go bag, and I can, put that show on the road. Any community wants me to come, I can show them what's involved. So that's one way to get ready. The other thing is our organization needs to be more ready in that we need more training. We've really been learning as we go, and we do a lot of reading, and we've had some experts in, but there are actual courses. They're called Incident Command. Any retired military guys know all about this, but those courses cost several $100s, and for 6 or 8 of us to go would be a major expense. But we really need we need that discipline to know how we communicate with each other, who's in charge, how we hand off at the end of the day, what records we keep, how we interact with city and emergency responders in the province.
That's a lot.
We really need, we need to know that.
So it seems that between the lines, what you're saying is like, hey, every neighborhood should have a handful of people that are trained. And if disaster strikes, so that when you call 911, you get a busy signal or no risk signal, then those people know what to do. Yeah. They've had the training, and maybe they also have equipment and supplies to communicate and find out from the city's emergency control center what the expected duration of the emergency is.
Yes. And I think, one new position we've just created is that of a watch officer. So we're going to have that as a rotating position now amongst our board or our volunteers, someone who really tracks the weather. And that's something that's much easier to do now online, maybe a couple of weather services, and looks at the maps, and will be on, keep an alert status and advise us quickly through a phone tree that we're on standby or we're activating a full response. So that's something new that we're just introducing into our group.
That's a very state of readiness, all the time. Yeah. Wow, so impressive. So when you retired, you were hoping to do a lot more quilting.
I was.
You spend a lot of time on all this. I'm aware, because I've known you for several years now, you exude a whole lot of positive energy. So what's your secret to keep going, Judy?
Well, I feel silly telling you this, Angela, because this is your life as well. But for those of you who don't know us, I guess I feel this work is really important. And I think I've still got something to offer. I get up every day with a long to-do list, and I just kind of work away at it. I think doing this kind of work has the potential to make a difference.
Yeah.
And lots of things, lots of groups I feel don't maybe or aren't, in my view, making a big difference. So that's why I do it. And I also try to have a balance. As you know, I do a lot of dancing. That's where I'm going as soon as we're finished this evening. So I think keeping a balance certainly helps. So dancing does that for me.
Wise words. So thank you so much for coming in, Judy, and thank you for the excellent work that you do in West Carleton. You truly are a role model to so many community leaders. And also the reminder to all of us from your work that you're not in denial and that climate change is not going away. And there definitely are things that we can do to be prepared for its fallout and how it's going to hit our communities.